This is one of the most polarizing questions of our time. Was Putin justified in launching the war in Ukraine? Some say it's pure imperialism. Others claim it's a reaction to years of Western aggression. Today, we're going to break it all down. No emotion, no propaganda, just context, history, and the uncomfortable truth no one wants to talk about. I truly believe that we are, as humans, for the very first time, breaking away from the propaganda, from the media, the legacy media that constantly, over the last decades, propagated a certain way of how we should perceive things. But I truly think it is changing right now, and people are understanding the truth. It's not West against East anymore. Nowadays, reporters or interviewers such as Tucker Carlson are showing another side to the Western world. By interviewing Putin, many other Americans followed, requesting interviews with Putin, the president, or even the foreign minister of Russia. Now, obviously, Zelensky just recently had a showdown with J.D. Vance and Mr. Donald Trump at the Oval Office and got completely wrecked. The media is representing this still in their perception and in their view, but the world is truly waking up. So this question matters because we need to understand who here is doing the right and who is doing the wrong. I truly believe that the Western way is being exposed over the last couple of years, and people are understanding that many things the Western world did, especially America, is good for the benefit of all of us, but there's also truly things that are just causing more troubles than actually really needed, where people, as we know, always make money when there's wars and conflict. Conflict and war is an interest of some of the most richest family on this planet Earth, but again, the normal people are waking up. So we need to understand, is Trump's war justified or not? Very important is that I'm not gonna pick a side here. I'm neither Russian, nor American, nor Ukrainian. I'm just seeing it from a neutral view and perspective. And for me, it's important as a person that is involved in politics, but involved especially in the financial markets, to understand why this is happening, where this is probably gonna go, but also, is all of this justified and what can we learn out of this? First of all, I want to break this video down in a very easy manner. I'm not going to use any difficult words. I'm not going to go too deep into all of the different contracts or all of these names. Let's talk about it in a very basic language. On top of that, I'm also not someone that is so deep inside of the topic of why Russia and Ukraine has a war. Obviously, I know the information why it happened, but I cannot name every historical important day where things were decided. For me, this is a very easy conflict that then through the media is being made more complex than it even is. Look, everything in life, if you understand it, can be explained very simple, and if not, because the more explanation you need for something, the less you really understand it or the more the person is lying. Just look at that next time you speak to someone. If you ask a simple question and someone explains it in a very difficult or long manner or way, that mostly means they have no idea. So for me, it's very important to break complex things down, make it very easy, and then judge by a normal, rational way without being focused on calling someone the winner or the loser or who is in the right or not. I truly believe that the Western world over the past decades has shown how they, at the end of the day, control this planet, how they inflict wars, how they inflict certain different crises into countries to destabilize the region or the country, therefore taking out the resources of this very country. These are things we have seen over many, many decades now on especially how America acts. I'm not here to judge if America is doing that in a good way or in a bad way, or if this is necessary or not. All in all, we can be very grateful most of the times, depending on where we live, how our life currently is. We enjoy a lot of freedom. We enjoy freedom of choice. We enjoy to be employed, to make money and spend our money however we want to. That, unfortunately, is not possible in every country. And yes, there could be more freedom, but we should also see it, especially towards America, from a little bit more positive, but not only from a negative perspective. But especially when it comes down to this question, was it justified that Putin started this war basically, or launched this war? I truly believe over the interviews with Tucker Carlson and with the foreign minister of Russia, many times it was shown by them and explained in multiple different ways, reciting all of these different events and contracts, that Russia in that sense was pretty much forced to defend their borders of NATO continuously approaching the Russian border, including, for example, in the future, or that's why basically all of this started, right? Ukraine wanted to be part of the NATO, therefore they are defended a little bit more. That also means NATO can get deeper into Ukraine and start to have more military bases towards Russia, because the conflict of West and East is a conflict of many years, at its highest peak back in the times with the Cold War, and kind of always continues, the competition. Therefore, what I found very interesting is what Putin said in the interview with Tucker Carlson, that many times there was the request of Russia to join NATO, many times there was the request Putin or the Russians in general to make peace with the westernized world, but this was not accepted. Not accepted because it paints a better picture and a better business model for the westernized world to have an enemy. You need to understand that sometimes it's better to have competition than no competition. It's better to have an enemy so you can justify certain spendings on certain areas that normally are not justifiable. Therefore, this war has more interest than just people and country and Russia having a bigger piece of the part of the world which they already have a big landmass, but it's about defending their right at the same time for the westernized world. It's about keeping something running to control, inflict, take minerals, as we have seen with Trump now and Zelensky for minerals deals. So there is not only the money being lent for someone to win a war to defend their people, but there's a business idea behind it to extract minerals from a certain country and inflict contracts, because this very country, Ukraine, is not able anymore to repay all of the debts that they've built up lending this money from the US. At the same time, Britain destroyed basically the peace process, because there was a peace process between Russia and Ukraine, and the British PM said, we're going to continue this war, you should not back down, you should continue it. So there's clearly an interest that is not honestly communicated in the media, an interest of business, and the interest that we always have seen on this planet Earth, the interest in making money with conflict, because fear drives prices, therefore prices make money. Import, export of certain goods that are needed in wars, debts that are created to inflict more dominance on a certain country, attracting minerals or very important, let's say, valuables out of this country, can only happen through a war. If I put someone in a position where I can support him, or I support him, or he's in a position of need of money and support to fight a war, right? Then obviously I can ask back to repay his debt, and there's different ways on how to do that. America was always a country that obviously wants to have a lot of dominance and is a dominant nation. The industrial complex, the military complex, innovation, and whatsoever. There are different other big countries that have massive powers such as China, India, Russia, and so on. So I understand you want to be the strongest, therefore you need to have certain unethical ways on how to control and keep you in number one place. It has always been like that. We had the Dutch Empire, then we had the British Empire, then we had the American Empire, and mostly over 100 years of time, and if this time passes, new empires are basically chosen either by innovation, either by changing something major in their economy, or in the way of imposing threat towards other countries. America still keeps this lead now over 100 years, and how they do it, it's especially by imposing dominance on other countries, weakening them or strengthening them, helping them or withdrawing or controlling them by putting them in certain situations. So at the end of the day, if we see it very neutral to come to a point, every country is just going to look out for themselves. As Trump says, America first, Putin says, Russia first, as I say as a person, my life, my family, my loved ones first. And that's how it should be. But the question is always, is Putin the villain or is it America? My idea of this video is not to call anyone a villain, but it's to understand and make it very easy for people to understand that wars happen because of reasons. And the aggressor is not always the aggressor, the one that just wants more land or wants to extract resources or just purely kill people. It's because they are defending their heritage, who they are. And especially in many parts of Ukraine where Russians lived a peaceful life, right, with their own language, with their own schools, it was basically forbidden by the Ukrainian government, by Zelensky's government, for them to continue to live their life as Russians, to speak their language in a foreign country, even though these parts back in the time were part of Ukraine, were not part of the Ukraine. It's very difficult. There's one very important thing that I think stands out in this whole war, and that is Putin ending the interview with Tucker Carlson, where he explained the story, and I will try to remember as much as possible, where he said that his Russian soldiers were standing in front of Ukrainian soldiers. And the Russian soldiers, they yelled at the Ukrainian soldiers and said, "Put down your guns." And the Ukrainian soldiers repeated in perfect Russian and said, "We are Russians, we will never back down." So as you can see, this is not a war of two countries. This is kind of even a war of the same heritage, of the same people, just divided by a line that politicians draw. So it's not only about the human factor that is involved in that I think makes this war insanely crazy, but also at the same time very interesting. Obviously, I'm not for this war. And with interesting, I don't mean it's a war that is good or it's a war that at the end of the day is justified. I think everything is justifiable and not. But here are two countries. One of them wants to impose power, the other one wants to defend himself. Everyone has the right to defend himself. So I truly believe, seeing from the outside, again, having no affiliation with either Ukrainians or Russians, I respect every culture and religion and person and heritage as long as they respect me and my family and my loved ones. I truly believe that there is definitely a certain agreeable and justifiable reason for Putin at the end of the day to defend his country after many warnings and after the Western aggressors, right, continued. If we go back a little bit, we have the Georgian and Russian war basically that happened out of the same reason, right? There was autonomous regions in Georgia and there was a war in between the Georgians and the Russians. Now we don't need to go into that too deep, but what is Georgia now willing to do? They want to be part of the European Union, therefore for the NATO. So that's another country right next to Russia that wants to be part of NATO. So if all of these countries, and there was a contract for that, and I truly believe as an entrepreneur, if my words and my contract say something, I'm gonna honor that. And if it's broken, I must suffer the consequences. And therefore, I think it's pretty much justifiable. Is it justifiable from the other side, from the Western world, to include new countries into the NATO and expand their dominance? 100%, because they try to do the very same thing, to defend themselves. Could there have been a better way of taking care of this? I truly believe the peace agreement should have happened if the PM of the UK would have not interfered. So now we have to ask our questions, why even after Trump's interview or basically meeting with Zelensky, where Zelensky basically was completely wrecked, was welcomed by the British, and the British said they will support them. France supports them, right? Germany supports them. There's gonna go another 100 million of US dollars of funds from Germany to Ukraine, right? So Germany is taking more and more and more and more money to give it to the Ukrainians and supporting them. So our question is, what is the reason for that? Do we really need to fear Russia taking over whole Europe? Putin actually said there's no idea of him to take over any other countries. Yes, very back in the time, there was the idea and concept where Putin said he wants to restore the Soviet Union and bring it back to its former glory under a different leadership. And I think he would be able to do that. But all of these countries around Russia, they have their sovereignty, they have their own institutions, they have their own languages, they have their own people, their own heritage, and they should live it as it is right now. So I truly believe that there is no intention of Trump to really take over, gain more landmass, if he has already so much landmass in such a big country that he needs to take a lot of care of himself. He has problems in his country as everyone else, but he also needs to defend his borders. What I truly find interesting is that many things have been said by the Russians, that there was peace agreements in process, there was requests to join the NATO, there was requests for peace, there were a lot of things that they tried. So far, no important American person or politician has answered these questions that are left. Why did America not interact with the Russians? Why was there no peace agreements? And as I think already explained, but again, I think it's very important to say that again, a certain person back in the time said that it's not possible for the Russians to join the NATO, just because at the end of the day, logically it makes sense, but there needs to be an enemy that the Americans can propagate in front of their public through their legacy media that they control to therefore again justify money. It's always about the money. I truly believe that the biggest lie here people still believe about the war is especially pointing out Putin as an aggressor that just wants to increase his landmass and gain new countries and dominate Ukraine. There's no reason to do that. There's really no reason to do that, especially the part that we mostly talk about in Ukraine that is being under attack prior to this very war, Crimea and so on, parts that kind of like, are still Russians live in there. They speak the Russian language, they're Christian Orthodox, they come from Russian descent, it is very difficult. It's not about that. It's like he's killing his own people. You know, there's a certain reason for that. And obviously, the westernized media is painting him as a warmonger, as someone that just wants to increase his landmass, his egoistic ideas. But if you truly listen to him, why is no one sitting down with an American politician and asking the same question that Putin has asked about why he started this war? I don't see any media about that. And the only smart people, American smart people, professors, they talk about that this makes zero sense from American side. So it's not only the Russians explaining and giving a rational explanation for the reason for this war, but it's even Americans inside of the country, professors, historians, and so on, explaining why this is correct, but why is there no Western politician, right, that are supporting these wars, supporting Ukraine? Why are they not coming with an explanation, right? So I truly believe he is pictured as a monster, but we really need to ask ourselves the question, why is he pictured as a monster? I'm not here to defend Putin. Again, it's none of my interest, but I truly believe there's a man that defends his nation, his country, his religion, his ethnicity, and the language of his people, and at the same time keeping his borders safe. And after a contract that was broken, or multiple contracts that were broken, he is acting, because at the end of the day, you also need to show your enemies, or the ones that dare to charge you and challenge you, that you will not accept breaks of terms, right? If you are constantly just saying, okay, there's a break, it's okay, I'm not gonna do anything, at one point there is gonna be a very strong military resistance on the Ukrainian border towards Russia, and therefore it's a threat to their countries. Let's make a very stupid, simple example. Let's say someone knocks on your door all the time, and then you sit him down and you make a contract and you say, you are not allowed to come in front of my door anymore and knock every morning because you're waking me up and you're annoying my family, you are scaring them, why do you knock on my door all the time? Let's say this contract is broken and the person continues to come back after years and continues to knock every morning on your door and knock again, it becomes louder. At one point, I'm gonna open this door, I'm gonna smack this guy in the face. That's just how it goes, guys. Very realistically. So I truly believe that this is a very, very big lie, and people, as always, and that's the real learning here. The real learning is take 50% from what is told you from side number one, take 50% from what is told from side number two, put it together, and you have an answer. But the biggest thing here I have learned is especially, right, the Western world wants to inflict and wants to control countries and wants these wars to go on. If not, this would have already been in peace. And that's for what I am for. I am for no Ukrainians killing any Russians and no Russians killing any Ukrainians, and people just settle and be good to each other. That's what we all want. But I also understand this is a stupid ideal that will never work, because money is made too much in these situations. This war has already rewritten parts of modern history, and it's far from over, unfortunately. But one thing is for sure, we need less emotion, less one-sided information, and more education when talking about topics like this. Now it's your turn. Was Putin's war, or is Putin's war justified? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them. And if you want more content that doesn't shy away from uncomfortable topics, hit subscribe.